Oh, come on.
Recovering from.
Yeah, not COVID though, thank God. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Chair, we're ready to begin when you are.
Right. Are you gonna give your opening remarks first?
Yeah. All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Abigail Mayorga. I will be helping direct this meeting along with Mr. Vaughn. Ward 4 NAV will begin shortly. If you do have public comment regarding any of the items on the agenda, please feel free to fill out a form to my left. They are on the table with pens, and then bring it to myself or Tyler here and we'll be able to assist you. We'll get through these agenda items. And Mr. Chair, whenever you're ready, 8 items.
Good evening, everyone. For those that do not know me, my name is Corey Bond. I am the chair of the Neighborhood Advisory Board, Ward 4. So welcome to the Thursday, May 18th meeting. Okay, Ms. Abigail, would you do roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Brian Harvey.
Here.
Renee Luck. Oh, sorry, Renee Kelly. Sorry. Here. Awesome. Victoria Luck. She's on Zoom, as you guys can see her here. Mr. John White. Here. Thank you, Victoria. Richard Simmons. Mr. John Briscoe.
Here.
Perfect. Mr. Corey Bond.
Present.
Mr. Jared Souther.
Present.
Ms. Kathleen Egan. Absent at this time. Councilmember Ebert.
Present.
Perfect. And then myself, staff liaison, Abby Mayorga. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum of the Ward 4 Neighborhood Advisory Board. You may begin the meeting.
Okay. First of all, folks, I would ask if you please rise and join me in the pledge. since I haven't seen you, I'm gonna.
Thank you. Join me. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we are on A3 and we have public comment. If you have public comment, as Abigail said, please make sure that you have the forms before you leave. You have 3 seconds and you can either stand here or stand up, whichever is.
3 seconds?
3 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Briscoe. Anyway, whatever is more comfortable, help yourself.
At this time, we do have one in-person submitted public comment. Kathy and Dave Schley.
We're just here to listen.
Okay, perfect.
I
Nope.
wrote that on my phone.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then if you would like to give public comment on Zoom, please raise your hand at this time. All right, Mr. Chair, it looks like no one would like to give public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. I am on A4, approval of the agenda. I'm seeking a motion
So moved. Briscoe.
and you would be
I said it. I said it.
I second today, Kelly.
Thank you.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. A5, approval of the minutes. Again, I am seeking, I would entertain a motion, please.
Second.
It's a motion.
Okay, and you would be,
Jared Southern.
thank you. Okay, and Ms. Egan just said that she would second. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No.
She can't. Oh, I can't. No. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
that's right.
Sorry.
Okay.
It's okay. So we have a motion by Jared and then second by Ms. Kelly. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. No opposed? Very good. Okay, Ms. Majorca, it is your turn.
Councilmember
Oh.
Hubert is first.
Oh, yes.
So my update, I don't know if anybody got to watch the last city council meeting. We are going to be redistricting our wards. We're going to be going from 5 wards to 6. So we're going to be removing the at-large position. Sorry, my voice. So we're not sure where the lines are going to be. We are going to be taking community feedback for this. We're going to have a consulting group come in and work on these maps. And the finalized map is due by September 1st. So it's going to be kind of a quick process here. So there will be postcards going out, or have they already gone out?
They should have already gone out.
Okay.
Additionally, we will be having staff come and present on the redistricting process and how the community can give input next June at our next NAB. That will be in June at our next NAB. And that is scheduled for June 15th at the North Valleys Library at 6 p.m. Mr. Briscoe?
Yeah, if we're in Ward 4 now, but what if after they do it, we're in some other Ward 17 or something?
Correct. Well, with Councilmember Eberts, as she just won her election, she has her seat retained until the next election.
I wasn't worried about it.
Oh, yeah.
I was worried about us.
So she's representing your guys' board. It would, the question that you're asking, yeah, it would just depend where you guys live. But they'll be able to answer those questions in June. I was like, I'm not the expert. I was like,
Yeah, I
sorry.
think there's a lot of questions
Yeah.
still, but they're gonna be redrawing the maps and it goes into effect. I know the maps are due September 1st. The map goes into effect
I think it's January.
January 1.
There.
So, yeah.
Yes. So write down all your
Changes.
questions. If you guys have additional questions or would like me to collect them, that way we have them all ready for them prior to the meeting, please feel free to send them to me and I can provide you my information.
By the way, I didn't mean to say I wasn't.
Yeah, I don't quote me on this, but our ward will probably be the least impacted just because of the way we are geographically. They'll probably kind of cut the bottom of us off, but the other wards will probably have a lot of shifting going around. They're gonna reduce our population sizes so that everybody's population is the same. But again, our ward will probably be the least impacted. And then the other updates I have, the city staff and Tom was here to go over tonight regarding the PFAS in the water situation. They'll go over that in more detail.
Anything else?
No, that was it for my update.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Mayorga, now I'm ready for you.
Awesome. For the record, Stuart White is present and I will count him for attendance at 6:08 p.m. The only reports that I have are the Ward 4 community cleanup is scheduled for June 10th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. All of the community is welcome to come, and that's at Dorothy McAlinden Park. They'll be taking waste, e-waste, hazardous waste. So we welcome you to spread that to your neighbors as well as participate. If you would like to volunteer as well, we're taking volunteers because it does get a little busy, but it's a lot of fun. So please take this opportunity. It's free, no charge, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And there's no limits in how many runs you can go through. So hopefully you guys can use that opportunity. And then there will be one in the fall if you don't, if you can't make it to the spring. Additionally, on the website, City of Reno Community Cleanups is the tagline. You can see the full schedule for the rest of these spring cleanups, just in case you can't make this one. So again, welcome to go to all of them, one of them, none of them, feel free. If you need more information, again, please let me know and I can get that to you. Additionally, again, our Ward 4 NAB will be scheduled for June 15th. From 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the North Valleys Library. One of the things we'll be talking about with staff is the redistricting process. So for your calendar. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm moving down to business items. B1, correct?
Correct. Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is the Truckee Meadows Water Authority North Valley's drinking water presentation. So go ahead, sir. Like I said, if you'd like to stand there, whatever's easiest.
Thank you. My name is Will Raymond. I'm with the Truckee Meadows Water Authority. I'm the Director of Operations and Water Quality. And I'm here to talk a little bit about water quality, drinking water quality up in the North Valleys, particularly, which is, I know what I was asked to speak about, and just kind of give an update of where we are and the differences. I don't have a very nice presentation. I know there's a great one following me with a lot of excellent data. But I want to take the opportunity to explain a little bit about PFAS and the regulations that are coming out, as well as how it affects Tumwa being your drinking water. I don't know typically how this format goes. I'm going to just do a brief discussion, and if you have questions, I'm happy to answer. I'm happy to stay afterwards if you have particular questions, but essentially PFAS is in the news a lot nowadays. It's ubiquitous. It's one of those things we wish wasn't there. Even North Pole, it's everywhere. It's a human caused chemical, lots of, maybe 100 years worth of putting PFAS chemicals in for different manufacturing items and things like that. But now we're dealing with where is PFAS found? How much is there? What is dangerous? What is safe? And that's where you have a regulatory process, the Safe Drinking Water Act, which the EPA sets forth the process. And it's based on the best available science, health effects. It takes all that into consideration and sets a regulatory number that all public water systems have to adhere to. The news that's out there right now, there is no regulation yet. It won't be, there's a proposed regulation that came out in March of 2023. The EPA expects to finalize this rule in December of 2023. So obviously there's a little bit of a delay. They have a proposed regulation of essentially 6 different PFAS type chemicals. I have a cheat sheet in my bag because I can't pronounce them off the top of my head, but it's very long polyfluorinated type names that I'd have to read to even try to pronounce. But utilities will be on the hook to meet that regulation 3 years after it's finalized. There will also be a small window if there are treatment technologies that have to be put in place to construct and deliver this water to our customers. And that could take a couple of years too. But that's also part of what went into this proposed rule. PFAS has been talked about for a while. It has only gotten to the point now where technology is so much better than it was before. Whereas you're looking in 2013, the last round of PFAS type sampling that Tumblr did with the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule 3. You're looking at a detection level that was 10 times higher than what it is right now. You go another 10 years, it's probably, you've just got this microscope that you couldn't see before. And it's not a microscope, it's, it's a different type of machine that will spit out a number as to what it sees. But the technology has gotten so good now that they can see it at such low levels. You're talking parts per trillion. And usually regulations are milligram per liter, microgram per liter. Now we're talking nanograms per liter. But ideally, we don't want to see it in the water anyway, because it's not a naturally occurring element. None of them are. So it's a very convoluted process. That's what's coming at the end of this year. Concurrently, though, there's another regulation that the EPA put out that started in 2023. That's the unregulated contaminant rule number 5. I want to say there were 6 PFAS compounds that were analyzed in 2013. There are now 29 because the analysis procedures are so low, you can see much more than you could 10 years ago. So we are analyzing 29 different PFAS chemicals, and we are required to sample all of our sources, all of our groundwater sources, our surface water sources. We have a 3-year window that we need to accomplish all these samples. The first samples, it's different for every utility, but we're a large utility, so we are required 4 consecutive quarters from each one of our sources. That is what's going to dictate what our compliance monitoring is based on historical numbers. It could be quarterly monitoring. It could be yearly monitoring. It could be that we see that the numbers are high enough that we don't want to put that water in the service. That's part of what we're trying to find out. What I can tell you is every utility, I think the number is there are 70,000 community water systems that are doing this sampling. I think the EPA or the American Water Works Association has 180,000 PFAS samples that are going to be analyzed. There wasn't even a certified method approved by the EPA until 3 years ago, I believe, to search at these low levels. So that's why everyone's in a rush to try to see what's out there. Everybody wants to know. What I can say specific to the North Valleys, which is kind of our topic at hand, we finally started getting data back. The samples we took in January took 90 days to get back. We're getting better, and it's not an internal lab. These have to be approved labs through the Environmental Protection Agency. We're finally getting some samples. What I can say is we haven't detected any PFAS compounds. The 29 PFAS compounds that we now have to look for, we haven't seen them in Lemon Valley 5. We haven't seen them in Lemon Valley 9. It's kind of hard to describe if you're familiar with the area. 5 is next to the elementary school. 9 is closer to Military Road. Silver Knolls is a well that's out there in Northstead. I think it's closer to that's one lake. I'm trying to think of what it was. Silver Lake. Yeah, we have a Silver Lake well, but results are just now coming in. So this isn't an acute issue. It's not like you get results in and now you have to throw your arms up because you're concerned. This is the data collection where we're trying to find what is out there. What are the conditions of our different wells, drinking water sources? Do we expect to take them out of service? Do we expect them to be good? That's what we're doing to get in front of this regulation we are going to have to adhere to in 3 years. So what I can tell you right now, those Lemon Valley wells that we have sampled show there's no contamination that has gotten into the groundwater. There's no surface water interaction getting down there. But this is quarterly sampling. We have to get 4 consecutive samples. So now we're on the clock. We're grabbing a sample every 3 months. And that's what has to be reported to the EPA. And that So that'll generate our 4 samples that come into a compliance value, which is why we're not talking about PFAS as an acute thing. It's, not to scare everyone. It's not like it's cyanide in the water. This is a long-term contaminant that they're trying to regulate. So other than trying to figure out, this is the early stages of this data collection, and it is required by the EPA. So we are on the train. We're going to get this done. We're going to get a pretty good idea of what our sources are. And I can tell you, I drink the water right out of the tap. I encourage you all to as well, but I understand there's concern. And hopefully this data collection effort helps us generate that data set where we're proving to the customers that drink our water, our local regulatory agencies and the federal regulation. And not too long, but I'm happy to answer questions now, or I'm happy to wait until after and you can find me, but I'll be waiting.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can make a recommendation, because beat 1, 2, and 3 all kind of go together, I would say we do the presentations. And then if the audience or the board has specific questions to the presenters, we would ask the presenter.
Do the presentations first.
Okay, perfect.
Correct. That's what you're
Yeah.
asking. Okay,
Yes,
that's fine.
Awesome.
I agree.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so now if I understand, we're on B2, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
The city of Reno staff and county staff will be doing B2 and B3 together.
okay. Mr. Flansburgh, welcome.
Hello, everyone. John Flansburgh, City of Reno. We're here tonight to talk about an update on PFAS. We had an introduction from Will in regards to the drinking water. We're going to also cover lake levels at Silver Lake and Swan Lake. So to the first or next slide. So what is PFAS? A little bit about this. PFAS, as Will mentioned, around, approximately 100 years. It was basically made to make our lives better, right? So we had fluoride carbon chains is what basically you have involved in PFAS. But what does that really mean? Well, what do? It repels oil and water. So think of your rain gear and how those are made. So the textile type things are that repel water or temperature resistance. So think about your Teflon pans that were made to help with those types of things, and friction reduction. When you look at the types of chemical or the types of products, it was everything from your carpet stain resistant products that would be out there that you would pre-treat your carpets with, to dental floss, eye makeup. How about microwave popcorn bags? Well, think about that. The temperature resistance and their repel oil and water. What happens when a popcorn kernel you want it to pop and butter? Well, you release a lot of moisture with that. So it's so your bags have to be made that way. Pizza boxes, nail polish, shampoos. So there are a lot of things that were made and have been made that have these chemicals in them. And that's why they're so prevalent out there. And it's only because of the last few years that this is becoming more of a concern. And so it finally got to a point where EPA, they haven't regulated it yet, but they have some proposed regulations out to regulate it. Kind of what Will's talking about. If we go to the next slide. So why are we talking about PFAS? Well, we're here because in late March, there was a Nevada Water Environment Association conference right here in Reno. We have staff who attend. Our Nevada Department of Environmental Protection attends these. It's where information is shared on different things and research studies that are going on. And what happened was that there was some research completed by a student at UNR, and he was looking at PFAS levels, and he was going out and testing water bodies all around our region, if you will, and was kind of interested in the difference between like alpine lakes. So think of it Lake Tahoe or some of the ones where we're going to get snow melt, and then more of the urban lakes. And so looking at Swan Lake, for instance, and testing the differences there, as well as other surface water bodies in the northern, mostly the northern part. Even Mono Lake, for instance, was part of his study. Well, there was a single test at Swan Lake that was high. And so that one test was like, well, was news to us. And so Tumwa, City of Reno, and Washoe County got together and said, all right, we've got this one test that was taken. Unfortunately, the test was taken back in August of 2020, but we're just finding out about it. We need to understand this more. And by the way, Swan Lake has risen. It's pretty high. We specifically constructed a pipeline from Swan Lake to go up to American Flat Farm so we could irrigate the farm up there, so we could reduce the volume in Swan Lake and help with that. And it was getting close to irrigation season, kicking back up again. And so we have not, and I'll cover that a little bit later in the presentation. But this is why we're talking about PFAS, because we had this one reading. It was just kind of like, well, we better get our arms around this and understand what's going on with it. And so from this, next slide, we worked together and developed a testing plan. Now, over on the table, on that side, we have a blow up of this diagram. But if you look, you can see on the very top, outlined in yellow, that is the American Flat parcel site. The pink dots are well water. The yellow dots are soil samples. And then the blue dots down towards the bottom down here are surface water. So that'd be like ditches, flowing ditches, other surface areas where water is entering Swan Lake, as well as testing Swan Lake right where the student tested and testing Silver Lake. And so we are waiting to get those results back. Will mentioned how long it was taking to get some of those results back. We were hoping, we wanted to expedite that. We were hoping to have them back this week. We still are hoping we might see something tomorrow, but certainly we would expect by the following week for sure. And again, we'll talk about the labs, and they're not as prevalent. And because so many tests are being done right now, the labs are just slammed trying to get results back. But as soon as we do have them, we will make those publicly available. So what will we do with the test results? Well, next slide. Again, our concern was Swan Lake. We wanted to have that pipeline in place so we could pump Swan Lake down. We are not doing that. What we're doing instead is we are using Tumwa well water for irrigating the farm. We want to keep the farm viable. Depending on what the results are, perhaps we can still pump down Swan Lake this year or not. We don't know until we get some that information back. But the history on this is that we began pumping out of Swan Lake back in 2020. We irrigated the farm the entire year in 2020 from Swan Lake. In 2021, we were only able to get a couple months. And in 2022, there were 2 or 3 months that we were able to pump from Swan Lake. The rest of those years in 2021 and 2022, we had to actually use the well water, which is what we're doing now from Tumwa. Next slide. So how does that work? The potential of how we can pump Swan Lake is we are only able to pump Swan Lake when it's above 4917. Right now, I think it's about 49, 20, what is it? 4921 to 22, just below 22, 4922. And so we can definitely pump the lake until we get down to this 4917. That's what was happening the last 2 years. We got down to 4917. The intake that we used to pump the lake was below or wasn't able to take the water in. Next slide. So once we get the water up to American Flat Farm, one of the things we originally did was we didn't want to overwater the farm. We want to make sure that we weren't getting overwatering so much that it was going down. So we put water sensors at 1 foot and 4 foot in the farm, and we have that monitored. And what we can tell you is that the 1 foot level was getting moist. The sensor was going off, and we have readings for that. The 4 foot sensor never changed, so it never got wet. So the water never penetrated below to the level of 4 feet. And so we know that the water was all on the surface that was used. And when you look at the overall aquifer or the soil column, you've got about 50 feet of sandy soil. You've got about a 40-foot column of clay, a very impervious section. And then you have a sandier layer down below, and that's where the aquifer, and currently the aquifer is sitting about 144 feet below the surface. And so we're very confident that the water that has gone up there has only been used on the surface and for the growing of hay. Next slide. So what's next? Likely the test results are going to give us information that we're going to want to seek more information from. What we do get from the test results is not only the level of how much of the chemical is present in the various samples, but it also, we can get an idea, as Will was mentioning, those 29 different constituents. There's different chemical, like your fingerprint, right? There's different chemicals that we can actually pinpoint out of there and what those chemicals were actually used for. And so from that, it's likely going to lead us to where those potential source or sources are coming from, so that we can understand it. We will share and have been collaborating with the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection. When I say that there's likely to lead to additional testing, it's likely then that we're going to be working with NDEP. They may be doing the additional testing, but we want to make sure that we're going to all be collaborating and getting down to the answers where the PFAS source is and how prevalent. Next slide. So there was a lot of discussion about, well, it must be coming from the wastewater treatment plant. We actually tested for PFAS year before last. We had several tests that were run. The levels of PFAS coming from the wastewater treatment plant were like trace amounts. Will mentioned that they just recently have gotten down to where they can detect at 4 parts per trillion, 4 parts per trillion. The highest reading we had, which was one reading, was a 13. And several readings were non-detect. So they weren't seeing the PFAS in the effluent stream. Why is that important? The lake reading that they got from the one sample from the UNR student was 4,700 parts per trillion. So way magnitude log scale difference between the two. Well, where does most of the water come from that enters Swan Lake? Well, you can tell from 2017, 2019, this last year, it comes from stormwater runoff. So majority of the water going in there is coming from stormwater. The second source coming in is going to be groundwater. It's not groundwater like springing underneath because Swan Lake is fairly impervious, but it's going to be that lateral movement. It's going to be going in and then coming in from the sides. And then you have treated effluent from reservoir and treated effluent from Lemon Valley Treatment Plant. Next slide. This slide here is informational. This is Swan Lake over here. This is Silver Lake. This is White's Lake. And so you can see from that outline, that is the ridge line. That is your watershed. That is where the water is going to be coming in from. So we are going to be sampling, well, we have sampled Swan and Silver, and we'll be getting those results back. And again, that will help to inform us what sources that may give the PFAS, depending on what we find in PFAS, where that's coming from. This is also leading into the next part of the discussion, which is talking about the lake levels. And so Dwayne's, please, Dwayne, you're going to be up next. Talk about lake levels. And what's been going on in Swan Lake. The next slide here. This is a relationship just to show you where the lake level is today. In 2019, the highest level, that is where the lake elevation was right here, 49, 23 and a half. So that's how much volume of water was in Swan Lake. The current elevation is at 40, just below 49.22. It's about 7,500 acre feet versus 10,000 acre feet. So a better way to say that is about 75% of the lake today is about 75% of the volume of water that we saw in 2019. And we are starting to see it get to that point where it's breaking over the curve, where we're going to start going down because of evaporation, warm weather we've had. And so I will turn time over to Dwayne to talk about lake levels and response from Washoe County, and we'll take questions at the end.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dwayne Smith. I'm the Director of Engineering at Washoe County. And appreciate it being able to be here tonight. And I think this is a real example where we see Tumwa, City Arena, and Washoe County collaborating. Because why? Specifically in this area in the North Valleys, we have a lot of overlap. We have a lot of infrastructure, we have a lot of planning, we have a lot of work that we're doing. But we also have a lot of residents, right? So the residents that live around Swan Lake are both Washoe County residents. and City Arena residents. Where do they get their water? They get their water from Tumwater. So we're all talking about the same people. So I appreciate that. Can we go to that next slide? I think that when you heard Will talk about some of the challenges with PFAS and how they're addressing that and what John just went through and talked about some of the introduction of the water levels, I wanted to take a few minutes to really recognize some of the challenges that we have had in the North Valleys over the last number of years, and to provide some reassurance to you as we move forward. We're focused on North Valleys in Washoe County from a measure and monitor response to flooding issues. Now, let me be real clear. We're focused all over Washoe County, but North Valleys has closed hydro basins. In these closed hydro basins, there's nowhere for the stormwater runoff to go, right? They're like the bottom of the bathtub. We also have one out in North Spanish Springs called Boneyard Flat. We keep our eye on that as well. Our approach on this monitor and measured response, though, has really been focused not so much on Whites Lake. Why? We don't have any residents that live around Whites Lake. We do have a roadway around Whites Lake. We need to keep that open. Silver Lake, well, the City of Reno has been doing a really good job on managing Silver Lake and those responses. And Washoe County's responsibility is Swan Lake, because that's, again, where most of our residents, most of the folks that live around Swan Lake are Washoe County residents. The board has been real clear. The county manager has been real clear. Protect the residents that live in and around these closed hydro basins. Make sure that we keep roadways open so that emergency responders can get to people's houses if they need to, and protect public infrastructure, roadways, et cetera. These are the mandates, these are the directives that the county manager and the Board of County Commissioners has given to us as staff. We've all experienced, if you haven't directly, if you live in the Swan Lake area, you drove next to protective barriers for years, right? Water levels were high. Evaporation is the key way to get water out of these closed basins. We were able to take down those barriers last year. They weren't certifiable anymore in case water levels rose again. They had served their purpose. They had met their kind of lifespan. As we moved into the fall of last year and into the spring of this year, Washoe County recognized that water levels in Swan Lake were going to come up again. Record-setting snow levels, right? You know, a lot of echoes of 2017 and 2019. So we instituted a process to protect, again, the residents, meeting the directives of the Board of County Commissioners, the county manager. But this time we did it a little bit different. In 2017, when the floodwaters were up on roadways, up on people's properties, we had no choice. We needed to act. The lake the lake jumped up. We had to act. And so those barriers were placed where they were. It was inconvenient at best, right? You're driving down Lemon Drive. It was uncomfortable. Pumps were located in places that caused noise for folks. And they're trying to get sleep at night. We took those lessons, and this year we implemented a process to keep the lake within the lake, but away from the roadways, away from people's houses to the greatest degree possible. So we took that direction, we took that information that we learned, and we applied it. The diagram on the right here, the current lake elevation. Now, blue is the extent of the lake. And then those red lines are those barrier systems that we put in. Those barriers, we took the approach that we need to build barrier to protect the folks, and we can continue to add to the top of that should water levels continue to rise. As you just heard John say a few minutes ago, we've reached that crest over point. Now you guys are probably all concerned, right? You're hearing it on the news. Carson, Walker River, right? Everybody knows that the temperatures are coming up and this runoff is going to occur and impact us. Less so on the Truckee River, right? There's a lot more management, a lot more reservoirs that can handle that kind of impact. But we are at Washoe County keeping our eye on Galena, Whites, Thomas. There could be some localized flooding from those. We don't expect a significant rise in Swan, Silver, or Whites. But we do expect it to potentially, we're right where we think we are, but we could get one of those thunderstorms that we had like Sunday night. Did you guys see that on the news? 2 20-minute thunder boomers, bunch of water in Lemon Valley, clogged up some culvert pipes, and here we go again, water on roadway. It's gonna happen again. It happened in January, right? Verdi Mogul, water in people's houses there. We had to close Toll Road for about a day. So these things do happen, they do occur. So even all of our best approach and best planning, still, we have to recognize that there can be localized flooding issues. But I want you to know that we're keeping, again, our eyes on Galena, White's, Thomas, Steamboat, making sure that we're prepared with equipment and people deployed. We go to the next slide. If you've gone onto our website, you've seen this graph before. Maybe you've seen me present this in meetings, right? So these are the water levels of Swan Lake, 2017, 2018, 2019. A little higher in 2019. I want to just point this out real quick. Here we are last fall. A lot of water came out of the mountains. A lot of water. That's why we had to respond so quickly. And that's what we did in January and February. So,
What was the dotted red line that went, is it? Go back. There you go. What's the dotted red line?
this is kind of like the average rainfall. So this green bands here are precipitation. So this just kind of give you a little bit of a marker about 7 inches. What is it? 7 point, I think it's 7 point. Can't read it. 7.5. Thank you. So like I said, we implemented those protective measures in and around Swan Lake. So I've got some aerial pictures here of some of the things that we did. So just for a little perspective, this is the Lemon Drive down here in the bottom. This is our wastewater treatment plant, Lemon Valley. So you can see this is the access road, which also acts as a barrier. And you can see this barrier that we constructed across here. We brought it out and tied it in over here, and you can see a big pump sitting there. So this protects all of the area in the south, where in 2017, there was water up in the neighborhood, right? This is an example of some of the relocation of those protective measures away from the neighborhoods, away from the roadway. We'll go to the next one. This is looking west. This is the Lemon Valley Elementary School. So you can see this is actually one of our sewer lines, our access road to the sewer line. This is Compton right here. And this barrier we built back in 2017, and we augmented it this year with these additional HESCO, and you can see the pump sitting right there. But I really want to draw your attention to 2 things here. First of all, it's again a recognition of the protection of the neighborhood. School sits a little bit higher, but you can see this picture was taken last week. Water levels are nowhere near the school, not on school property. We go to the next slide. This is up at the north end of the lake, looking to the south. This is Pompey. Out of the couple of homes that had water in them in 2017, this was the second home down here that had water in it. So you can see that we built a barrier system here, and we've augmented this one with HESCO barriers. We like HESCO. They work well. They're quick to deploy. This is a residence here, and because of its location, and it's kind of isolated, we went with inflatable barriers. So these are some inflatable dams. And then there's you can't see it, there's small pumps to keep any seepage water out. Go to the next slide, please. Now this is looking north. We're still up at the north end of the lake. This is Pompey. This is Jean Way. Shane Way. Almost lost it there for a second. We purchased this property with a FEMA grant, and we razzed the home. And so we built a barrier along that property, and then north of the Jean Way berm, the berm that goes across here. Here's the City of Reno's pump to pump that irrigation water. And these are our pump. Might have that backward. No, that's the City of Reno pumps. These are our pumps to pump water out. So all the water that comes down from the neighborhoods here travel down the majority of the channel, the storm drainage channels and then come over here and we pump it over. Go to the next one. And the final location is on the east side. So this is Arkansas. So this is Lemon Drive. This is Arkansas over here. There's been a lot of concern on the east side. And if you're over here on the east side of the lake, there was some concern about the connectedness between the lake and the neighborhoods. So any of the stormwater that comes down on the east side is going to travel down through the low areas, go underneath and through the channel and come out here. And then we installed a pump over here temporarily. But this is what I wanted to point out. We built a large barrier over here. We call this the notch, and we closed that notch off to keep the lake within the lake. Now, we removed this pump last week. Pump cost $14,000 a month rental. The size of the area that captures stormwater is so large over on the east side. We didn't need to keep the pump there. As a matter of fact, if it rains and snows, we have plenty of time. I had this phone call with several residents. I get a lot of phone calls. I called them back and I said, listen, I assure you that if we need to, we're going to reinstall that pump, but I'm going to try to save a little bit of money. That we've got a comptroller at the county that's on me. So I want to make sure that I'm being fiscally responsible, but I'm maintaining my directive from the county manager and from the county commission to protect the residents. So I'm prepared to go. I need to. So we had a big winter. We have runoff, rising lake levels. We've responded. We built the protections. They're in place. They're effective. We have not had any issues. If the water increases, we're ready to go. It's not going to happen right now, but you're probably thinking about next year, right? So this is a multi-year process, folks. We're still in this. It's something that our commitment is strong. So if we need to build additional barriers, we're going to do that. We continue to do inspections. We have our pump watch. We have to have pump watch, right? And what I mean by pump watch is we make sure they're fueled, make sure they're operational, make sure they haven't been vandalized. Had some issues in the past. It's costly. And we make any repairs to the barrier system as we need to. We're continuing to do our water level collection and of course collaborating with our regional partners. So you're probably thinking, okay, you spent a lot of money, and we have. Are you prepared to continue to spend money? Well, we have effectively spent about $13 million in Swan Lake alone since 2017 flood response and flood fighting. It's a lot of money. March 23rd, forget the date, March of this year, March 2023. We went back to the board because we need to make sure that we had sufficient funding to keep up our flood efforts, our protection levels. So the board authorized to transfer an additional 1.5 million to our contingency fund to allow us to do this. Commitment. So I mentioned a second ago about the commitment. That's because we expect water levels to get down to about 19 this year, 49, 19. Again, evaporation is the key. This is 2017, 2019. I think that's 22, 21. So we're right up there. So yeah, please be assured that Washoe County is going to continue to monitor and maintain those barriers and make additional increases as necessary. We've learned a lot in our response over the last six and a half years. We made the decisions. We constructed those barriers this year away from people's houses, away from the roadways. We have a strong budget team that has really been key and integral in helping us do the things that we need to continue to do. I'm not just saying that because of certain members in the audience. We continue to monitor our changing water levels, because things can go up. Again, we have these thunderstorms that could cause some issues. Most of those issues are not going to be associated with the lake itself, but are going to be the drainage channels and roadways adjacent to and outside the actual lake areas. But we're also, keeping our eye on those pieces as well. I think that's my last slide. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Well, good evening. Thank you, Dwayne. I'm Trina Magoonan, the Director of Utility Services for the City of Reno. And we heard John Flansburgh and Dwayne Smith talk a lot about Swan Lake. So I'm here to touch on Silver Lake water levels. And so this graphic, similar to the one John earlier presented on Swan Lake, this is for Silver Lake. In 2019, so sorry, water's elevation was approximately 4968. As of May 3rd this year, the water surface elevation is closer to 4965, I believe. And so that represents about 2,000 acre feet less of water in Silver Lake than there was in 2019 at its highest level that we've seen in quite a long time. And as John also mentioned, we expect that we're kind of at the peak of that. And unless we have some active rainstorm events that come in, we're really expecting at this point with the warmer weather this weekend, that evaporation from the snowmelt and the higher elevations, and that it will either be evaporating or it will be soaking into the ground and not as much reaching the lakes, and that really any additional contribution would come from a rainfall event. Next slide. I also wanted to talk about Reno's flood action plan for Silver Lake. We're below our actual flood action plan elevations. However, because we know that there are some known areas where we start to see problems, we did go in and install a culvert backflow prevention device. That's a gate right there that basically doesn't allow water to back up across Moya Boulevard. Next slide. And then we did also build some HESCO barriers at the lowest part in Silver Lake's watershed, and that's near Urban Outfitters. One other thing I wanted to touch on, John and Dwayne both touched on rising waters in all of the rivers that we have. Those are really, as he said, we're talking about the Truckee River. They're predicting high levels, stay out of the river. Again, those are humongous watersheds. There's a lot of controls up there. They're releasing water from those reservoirs to make sure they stay at appropriate levels. And so we're not going to see that here unless we have a rain event. It might go up a little. Again, we haven't even reached the first action stage of Silver Lake's flood action plan. So if it does rise, we have more and more HESCO barrier. We have more and more protection levels as that goes up. We don't foresee that being an issue this year, but we do have that plan. Next slide, please.
You can for a question?
Sure.
Can you go back to the slide? What's the white stuff back there?
I believe that's snow.
Well, then why are the levels lower now than 3 years ago when we're going through a big drought?
So
And why isn't that snow going to end up there?
a couple of things. It
Okay.
depends on the time of year. So when you have snowpack and a warm rain in the middle of winter, it really melts that snow and it brings it down. When you get to this time of year, as the snow melts, it's gonna, because of how warm it is, it's gonna evaporate into the air as opposed to running off. And it's also not as saturated as it was in the middle of winter, that the soil is not as saturated. So it's infiltrating into the ground and it's evaporating instead of just running straight off into the ground. So kind of a different situation than we had also in 2017. John, maybe you can remind me, how many back-to-back atmospheric rivers did we have? Many, yeah, and a very unusual amount of back-to-back atmospheric rivers, one
Worse
after
than
another.
this winter?
Well, this winter they came as snow, which melts slower, and it's actually quite honestly, sort of like the Goldilocks scenario, as opposed to where they came as warmer rain on an already elevated snowpack.
Thank you.
I think that picture probably is from,
I think that's 27.
no,
Oh.
I think it's just a couple months ago.
Oh, yeah, this isn't that recent. We actually installed the HESCO 3 months ago, I believe. So just in preparation, because we did see the snowpack and we thought, well, let's deploy it while we have it. We ordered more in case we needed it. We went to council and said, there's a truckload that they can send us right now. Let's buy it and have it on hand in case we need to deploy more HESCO around the lake. Next slide. Another thing we did this year, Washoe County has had a webcam on Silver Lake for a number of years. which is fantastic. So we went ahead and deployed a webcam on Silver Lake. Both of them have, they're looking at a board that shows water surface elevations. And you can take a picture of this. You can also go to each of our websites and find these webcams. For Reno, you can just search Silver Lake webcam and but you can click on it. And so any time of day or night, you can look at what is the water surface elevation in either of these lakes. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, to my dais, first of all, anybody have any questions?
John White for the record. For the group as a whole, I know along Lear, they had a major flood control project that over the last several years. And now they have a new pumping station on the west end of Lear across from Moya, across in Silver Lake and all that. So I suppose that's all under control. They won't really need the Heathcote barriers on that southeast section of Moya.
The lift station you're referring to is a sanitary sewer lift station, so it's not for flood control.
Right, it was done about the same time that happened, so I assumed it was, that's something totally different, so it's not, you still need the pumping stations if it filled up that much.
Right, exactly. Ground levels are very high in that area.
Mhm.
But one of the reasons that we installed the gate on the back of that culvert was so that it wasn't backing up into the river.
And also longer, they have, is that industrial development in the southeast section of Silver Lake Playa? Because there's a lot of extensive work, looks like mitigation of ponds and all kinds of stuff going on Silver Lake there. I know it didn't come before our board, so I imagine it meets any code requirements, but it's a lot of major work going on there. I was just wondering what that was.
Yeah, so there is I don't know if it's industrial, but a big box development on that southeast corner of Silver Lake that's going in. I can't speak to whether it came to the NAB or not.
Well, they changed the whole shoreline.
You're talking about Moya.
Yeah, Alpha Moya.
Oh, yeah.
The Silver Lake Playa, that's Alpha
And
Moya.
they had to excavate part of the bank of Silver Lake in order to provide volumetric mitigation for the areas that they were filling. And also to mitigate for the increase in imperviousness for that particular project over national ground.
And that's a building they're gonna put in there or something. All right, I just wasn't sure what they're developing.
Jonathan, that's by Sally's Beauty Supplies, kind of right there.
Yeah, it's right, yeah, it's on the east side of Sally Beauty.
Victoria has a question online. Go ahead, Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Leck for the record. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question was just for the live viewing of the lakes. Is that what the measure, like there's like boards out there next to the lakes where you can see the levels? And they seem to just be a newer addition. So is that part of the live viewing? So you can see where the level is?
Yes, yes, that's correct. The boards, it's a live view of the boards that you can go to that website and look at what the lake levels are with respect to those boards. Currently, at Silver Lake, it's below the bottom of the board because it hasn't reached flood action stage. And I don't know if you want to talk about the county one.
Is it possible to pull up? Can you click on
That
that?
would be great.
So, just scroll back up just a little bit. The first, so that's the Swan Lake camera, installed that several years ago. And so and that is located at the Washoe County Water Reclamation Facility, the Lemon Valley Water Reclamation Facility, and that points to the west. So you can see Lemon Drive in the background. The school is just off to the upper right. And so you can, that shows levels on the board. And you can see that the water levels are. If you scroll down to the next screen here, we just added this screen. What this screen shows is a couple of things. The blue is the current extent of Swan Lake based on the measured level. So right now, the level of the lake is at that 49 21.8. That water boundary correlates to that 49.28. It also shows the red barriers that were constructed to keep the lake within the lake. So if you live on the south end of the lake and you're kind of curious, is the water getting up toward the school? You can zoom in and actually see, based on very high resolution, we call it LiDAR, but it's really high resolution contours. You can actually see where the water levels, it really depicts where those water levels are very well. So you can see in that area, for instance, where we built the berm, where she had just zoomed in on, then you can see where the water level is, where there's not a protective berm as it kind of moves up and down. So this is part of our commitment to give as much information to everybody as possible. So you can go online and quickly kind of understand where the water levels are, where the protections are. Now, what this doesn't show is on the east side is a natural berm. That's what's containing the lake on the east boundary there. And so that's a natural feature. So I didn't have them put the lines on to show that natural feature, but that's why the lake is where it's at. So I hope everybody finds this as a kind of a hidden tool.
Okay, hold on, Derek. Okay, folks, I will remind you, please make sure you identify yourself for the record when you speak. That way, the city has a record. So please keep that in mind. Jared, go ahead.
Jared Souther for the record. I live off Silver Shore, so very familiar with Silver Lake and the opportunity there. I guess one question I have in talking about the PFAS and the studies that are taking place at Swan and Silver Lake is what effects does it have on, I guess, wildlife? And as we go through the studies, what actions will be taken to try to correct PFAS?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. Kevin Dick, I'm the district health officer. And there's not a lot of data on what effects on wildlife. And there's not a lot of standards that have been established for surface water. There are 16 states that have established state standards for surface water, and those standards are for surface water used for drinking water. Some of them are for surface water because it can be used for fishing with people consuming the fish. And the levels, the most stringent standards are standards that Wisconsin has. And they have a standard for PFOS, and that's set at 20 parts per trillion. And they have a standard set for PFOA, and that's set at 8,000 parts per trillion. So the UNR sample that was collected was for all PFAS. These are two of the predominant PFASs. For all PFASs that they found, it was 4,700 parts per trillion. So the levels in the lake we were concerned about because we weren't expecting to see levels like that. But they're much lower than the surface water standards that have been established by other states that have. EPA federally has not proposed a surface water standard.
The PFOA was what standard in Wisconsin?
That was 8,000 parts per PFOA. That was 20,000.
20 parts. So the two were 20,000 to 8,000 to put in context.
Speaking of the natural burn and Swan Lake, working with RTC and the new phase of Lemon Valley expansion of Lemon Valley Drive, that creates a barrier further for flooding mitigation. But I know that Washington County School District is planning to rebuild the Lemon Valley Elementary in the next few years. And this, I guess my question is, with the steps that we're taking with potential continue to pump out, is that still a safe place to have a school?
Well, I think that the response that I would give is yes, because the water levels are monitored. And in 2017, we constructed barriers behind the school along the fence line to protect the school. Now, please understand that the lowest elevation of the closest building is about a foot above what the current floodplain is. So water levels, even with the barriers not there, would not have come up to the school. But what we were concerned about was the encroachment of the lake onto the school property. Kids like to go out and play in the water, play in the mud. I mean, it was going to create a problem, right, from a lot of levels. So that's why we constructed the barriers along the fence line and kept the water out of the school. Now, it just so happens that the school has some low areas as well as the Washoe County Park that's immediately adjacent to it. So there's some areas that when it rains and snow melts, will kind of collect water and pond. You know, that's not the lake intruding onto the school property. That's just simply precipitation gathering in those low areas. We're really excited to work collaboratively with the city of Reno and with RTC on a relocation of Lemon Drive. That project is moving forward. I know that there's a lot more discussions to occur, and we're still very early stages. So no final decisions have been made, you know, along those lines, to not turn into earth. That's the best way to say it. But there's a lot of options. Those options really capture the need for safety. So the traveling public, but you're absolutely right. That was one of the discussions one of the pieces of the discussions when looking at these potential roadway changes is not only how do we provide safer roadways and safer ingress and egress for people that live along Lemon Drive, but how do we incorporate any of those decisions into a stormwater / flood protection approach, right? How do we take advantage of this and really make it do double duty or triple? So those are some of the things that we're really happy to continue to advance and work on that forward.
Okay, does anybody else on the dais have any other? Miss Megan?
Megan Ebert for the record. So the decision to stop pumping water to American Flats, how was that decision made? Was it over concerns about contaminating the soil or using that water for livestock feed?
I think it's just abundance of caution. We found that out. It was like, well, we don't know what the impact is going to be. We don't know what the readings are of the water right now. That water has gone up to the farm. It was being used to grow hay. That hay has been fed primarily to cattle. What does that look like? Is there it usually, we don't know what the plant uptake of PFAS was.
Okay.
And so we're going to get more information on that as we find out what these levels are. And I think, the surface levels that Kevin mentioned, the 20,000 for one type, and 8,000 for another type. Maybe we're going to find out that it's going to be okay for us to go ahead and still irrigate the lake up to the farm.
And I forgot, we had the map earlier, but were soil samples taken from American Flats as well? Okay, thank you. That was it. Thank you.
And Councilmember, can I just add to that?
Yeah.
I think it's really important to recognize that when Washoe County, when we move forward with the planning for the barrier systems to protect the residents, to keep the roadways open, those are done regardless if we move water with the irrigation pipeline up to American Flat, lowering the lake levels or not.
Yeah.
Those protection levels are there. And if we need to raise those, that's exactly what we'll do. It's really independent of the irrigation project to move water from the lake. So I don't want there to be any confusion. Maybe somebody might think, well, if you can't irrigate that, there's going to be a problem with Swan Lake and flooding with Swan Lake. I want to assure you that that's not the case.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing nobody else on the dais have any questions, I will open it to the public. If there's anybody that has questions, please feel free to ask. Seeing nobody, okay. Thank you, everybody, for your presentation. We do appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to close this section and so we can move on. So 4, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
but I got to the library on time. I just didn't read all the details. I looked at it, I didn't read it. You know. Jumping around. Yeah, I looked at it online to see what all we'd be dealing with, but why do I look at the address all the time?
Well, it's kind of funny because we actually said, oh, he probably went there.
Why would? No, but like I said, I've been involved in this since the eighties.
Right. Yeah.
All right,
All set.
you ready? Go.
Good evening. I'm Mike Rayleigh with Christie Corporation here representing ADS Masonry. Also with me tonight is Kent Hanford, also representing the project applicant. Get the next slide. The request before you tonight is a master plan amendment and a zoning map amendment. Master plan amendment is to redesignate 0.65 acres from single family to mixed employment. And the zoning map essentially mimics the master plan amendment to rezone from SF8 to mixed employment. Next slide. So the site is located at 275 Western Road in Panther Valley, 0.65 acres, so about 2/3 of an acre, just east of Panther Drive on the north side of Western Road. You can see it outlined. There's three individual parcels. Next slide. So these are some pictures of kind of the existing conditions. Picture there on the left is the site itself. It's currently being used as a storage yard. It has been historically, back dating before this was even annexed under the county. That area along Western Road had a history of industrial use. Picture on the right is the property that immediately adjoins the site to the east, the existing industrial use. As you can see, it's very industrial in character. Next slide. And then these are some pictures kind of along Western Road directly adjacent to the site. So the piece to the site on the left is directly to the south. In the middle there is our site is directly on the right of that truck. It's kind of looking west along Western Road, and then the exact opposite view on that slide looking east down Western Road. Next slide. So this is the overall master plan that exists today. As you can see, everything along Western Road is generally industrial, with the exception of the residential lots that front Panther Drive. This site fronts Western. It does not have any frontage along Panther at all. Next slide. So as you can see, this is the existing on the left, proposed on the right. We're proposing to redesignate it in the master plan to mixed employment. Originally, when we had filed to rezone to industrial, or master plan to industrial and rezone to industrial commercial. However, after meeting with staff, and I'm going to get to what ultimately why we're doing this, but the project that's envisioned doesn't necessarily need industrial zoning, where industrial zoning would allow more intense activities, kind of like you see along Western Road. The mixed employment was determined to be a better transition between residential uses and the existing industrial that's to the east. So next slide. So as I mentioned, as you can see, there is some mixed employment zoning in the neighborhood now. Next slide. And then here's what we would be proposing to take those 3 lots to mixed employment. Kind of mimicking that master plan amendment request. Next slide. So what is envisioned for this site is ADS Masonry wants to develop a shop building and essentially create their headquarters at the site. So it would be really a significant cleanup of what's there now in terms of the operations, much more organized, bring it all up to current city standards. This is the first step in that process. Next slide. There's kind of a look at what the building would look like. It's not a big warehouse, would have standard operating hours, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. generally speaking, Monday to Friday. Not a lot of traffic in and out. And if you look at the traffic that would be generated by such a business compared to single family homes as they're built there, it's basically a wash. It's about the same trip generation. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the mixed employment designations are much less intense than the industrial commercial that typically lines Western roads. This will have to come back for a minor conditional use permit based on the residential adjacency. So there will be another public review process that this will go through. We think it's a much more appropriate use, given the fact that this fronts on Western Road, which is entirely industrial in character. If this was fronting on Panther Drive, I think it would be a different case. But given that if you were to put residential in there, they would have industrial on two sides and heavy industrial on one of those being very heavy industrial. I think that this is a much more appropriate use and provides a transition back over towards Western Road, or excuse me, Panther Drive. Next slide. With that conditional use permit, this forthcoming specific conditions will be added to address all potential impacts in terms of window placement, landscaping, lighting, that sort of thing. I think this is much more consistent with the area, especially that industrial character on Western Road. It will greatly enhance the site aesthetics. If you've had a chance to go out and look at the site, this, like I mentioned previously, we'll bring it up to city code. Landscaping, nice attractive building. I think it will really be an improvement to the neighborhood. That basically wraps up my presentation. And I don't know if you had anything to add, but we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. Guys, yes.
Renee Kelly for the record. Is what's next door? Are we looking at on Google Maps?
Go
Is it
back.
a house that's next door?
Yes,
Because
there is
like
a
they're
house
saying-
here that fronts Panther Drive.
And then behind you, there's nothing either there.
It's same thing. All you can kind of barely make up the outlines of the house. They're all kind of up along
Okay.
that.
They
But they face Panther. Yeah.
Thank you.
Brian Howard for the record. So the current businesses look like they've used that property for a long time.
Yeah.
Do you have to do soil samples and whatnot before you move in?
Yeah, so before we can build anything, we'll have to do geotechnical studies, so they'll go in those borings. It's not a full phase one environmental, but there'll definitely be some soil sampling that takes place, and if something comes up in that, typically for financing purposes, they'll require an environmental study.
John White. So this was mostly storage. Did somebody actually, are they leasing this property or something to have the storage, or?
They recently,
Charged.
EDS recently acquired the property, but historically, if you look going back, even I was looking through old aerial photos, it's been used for basically an industrial storage yard for 20+ years.
So who's gonna be responsible for any particular mitigations and?
The property owner will have to,
The previous or
the current property owner will have to, yeah,
they're responsible for, so the, all that vehicle stuff, they're gonna be dripping stuff
right,
everywhere for years.
yeah. So yeah, the current property owner, that would be part of their requirements by the city to clean all that.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Ms. Mayorga, if I'm right, we are at B42,
Correct.
correct? Okay.
Good evening. My name is David Ford. I'm representing CoSign. We are here tonight to present our request for signage variances in the city of Reno. This is for a development at the corner of Sky Vista Parkway and Vista Knolls Parkway. To the next slide. This is a map of the property. It's actually 4 different parcels, but it will be an integrated center. What we are proposing is 2 signs. One sign Z1 is along the freeway side of the property. And then we're proposing a second sign along the street side there. Each of those signs will display multiple tenants. There are multiple buildings in here. Panda Express is sponsoring this, so that's why we've shown their logo on there. We're not sure who the other tenants may be on here, but basically those are the two signs. The two variances we're requesting are, one, integrated centers less than 10 acres are allowed one freestanding sign, and we're proposing two. The second is related to the size of sign Z1. I think when we originally did this, we thought that based on their frontage, they were going to be allowed a 500 square foot sign. Turns out that their frontage is a little bit short of that, so they're limited to 250. Since we're this far along in the process, we're just going to leave that as our proposal. But the primary objective is that second multi-tenant sign along the street. Next slide, please. This is an example of what we're proposing for the main sign along the freeway side. It's 70 feet tall. It's 20 by 25, again, 500 square feet. It would be designed for 4 tenants. There's some photo simulations that we provided showing various heights. We want to make sure that it's visible along the freeway, so anyone who wants to exit has ample time to move over and merge and exit safely and not pulling any last minute risky maneuvers. Next slide, please. This would be the sign along the street side, smaller, 40 feet in height. This is dimensioned at 20 by 25. Again, we're looking for some feedback and input on, appropriate sizes. Again, we've done some photo simulations to show as people approach the corner, being able to see it. I know when I was up in that area at the other, where I thought the meeting was going to be, we did see some pole signs along there. I'm not sure if those are old, if that's the current design, but any kind of feedback or input that you would have for us would be appreciated. Next slide, please. Backwards. These are just some of a site plan showing where we took some of these photos from. It goes into the photo simulation showing the different heights and sizes of the sign. These are just keys, photo key, showing where some of the photos were taken from, just for reference. You could move to the next slide. I think now these are the photo simulations. So again, we're trying to show on here, this is where the sign would be as people approach. Same thing on the other side there. It's kind of hard to see because it's pretty far away. And even you can just go through the next couple, just go through those, but it just shows different heights. I think at the bottom down here, it shows, this is for a 50-foot high sign. This is northbound, 4 mile, 3/4 mile out, that sort of thing. So those are really for reference to see how we came about with the sizes and the heights that we are proposing for, for visibility, again, trying to make it safe for people, primarily on the freeway, to get off in a safe. I think that's pretty it. Any questions? I think we also have another person from Line online, as well as 1 or 2 people from Panda, if anybody has any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
John White was like, so. Yeah, I guess, the state charges a lot for the signs that they have attached to exits. And that would be too expensive for most of your company, people involved in that.
It's a good question. I'm not familiar with how that works with the state. You're talking about those signs.
Exit here for
next exit or something like that. And it has those on it. Yeah, I'm not sure how that works necessarily. And then I know there is a fee for that. The second thing is, I don't know how many spaces you can have on one of those signs. And obviously they're trying to have, they're trying to show.
You don't see a need for that part.
I'm sorry?
You don't see a need for that then?
No, for advertising on those state signs, no.
So
not if we have this.
You have other companies going to be on there. Are they actually going to be that visible?
Yeah, I think there should be, there's 4 panels that are all the same size. So basically, depending on who occupies what spaces, that sort of thing, that's something, between the property owner and property management to work out with each of the tenants, what they're entitled to on those various signs.
Hi, Chris. I think I gave you you feel free to unmute and respond.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that if we were going to go on one of those state signs, that's just going to be a reoccurring cost that Panda would have to take care of on a monthly basis. So we basically really tried to lay things out to really benefit the motorists so that they can safely exit without causing any, accidents or anything like that. And the fact that Lemon Drive is on a downgrade, it kind of puts that shopping center at a disadvantage. And we just wanted to make sure that motorists can exit safely. We wanted to avoid traffic going northbound, going to the next available exit, which would put traffic going through the local school, which is O'Brien Elementary, I believe. And the whole project is basically laid out so that, the center can survive and everybody can get there safely.
Hey, anybody? Jared?
I've had a chance to look at site plans on.
You are who?
Yeah, you introduced me, Jared, thank you. So I've looked at site plans on Kidder Matthews and I've seen a couple different renditions. As I look at this plan in front of us, I see at least 2 entrances or exits onto Sky Vista. And the placement of the sign facing Sky Vista, I would say I appreciated that it's elevated and not a monument sign blocking visibility, so cars can see as they attempt to turn right out of that driveway to leave Panda and the other restaurants, that they would not incur an accident. So clear line of sight of visibility. So that's important to maintain that safe distance.
Hey, anybody else? Seeing nobody, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Anybody? No. Okay. Anybody? Question? No? Okay.
Chris, did you have additional comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it's Superior Electrical Advertising, not Cosign. That was just a mistake.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Mr. John.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you. Appreciate everybody being here. This board's always full of, says a lot about community from my perspective. I've been doing this a long time. There's always 8 or 9 people about it that are participating in North Valley's NAB. That says something, right? It's good. My name is John Krompatic. I'm with Rob Fitzgerald. We've been working together for years. He's a developer and home builder and the owner of Northern Nevada Homes. And my company with KLS Planning. This is a 2-year, this is a request for a 2-year time extension for a tentative map that we had approved remarkably in August of 2019. Next, thank you, Abby. There's the site. Many of you know this. There's familiar faces here, but I'm gonna, share the brief history with everybody. That is Comstock 2 that's highlighted. Just below it is Comstock 1. And really the subject of the day is the UP Railroad crossing that's down at near the project entry on Comstock Drive. And I'll have a little more detail of that, but that just gives you the big picture. So in terms of the footprints of projects, you can see Comstock Phase 1 that we did about a year prior to Phase 2. Then Phase 2, we have the master plan roadway network connected to Comstock Drive and up to, as many of you know, into the Mountain View Estates and over to Parr Boulevard. So again, Comstock Phase 2 is the subject here. I wanted to share this letter of approval from August of 2019. So that's just the front page. And if you could go to the next slide, please, Abby. So slide 9, I'm not going to get into the details, but it's got basically 4 parts to it that were really important in our negotiations with community here. And it was all about the improvements that go on Comstock Drive, and I'll just touch on this. We have a northbound uphill bike lane that's going to be put in the segment of road. widening Comstock Drive for this entire segment from Virginia Street to the project entryway to a collector street standard. So that's more boulevardish. That's the idea for additional capacity. Adding a sidewalk, a 5 to 8 foot sidewalk that's variable because some areas we have capacity or right away for more width, and some areas we don't. And so there's a additional wide sidewalk, the entire stretch, and then a capacity improvement at the intersection of Virginia Street and Comstock. And the next slide will show all of this. So there is the crossing. So the reason we're here and asking for this, a couple of months ago, very quickly, we're not in a place to take any more risk. Mr. Fitzgerald's made enormous investment in acquiring the land, all the development to this activity, to this point in time. We are not able to get the agreement signed by UP Railroad. There's good faith effort on both parties. The parties have come together. They have not executed the agreement. Without them allowing us to cross the railroad, we cannot meet that condition of approval, cannot record the final map. So we're back here asking for a 2-year extension. That's the bloody truth of the matter. And you can see that segment. There's a lot going on there in the 4 points. There's really 4 different conditions, sub-conditions in the one condition number 9 that I shared with you. So I know that was important. I wanted to touch on that. It was very much important to the community when we were hosting neighborhood meetings, plus the NAB back at that time, and everybody's going, what's going on here? And just know, as a point of fact, we need permission from the railroad to go make that crossing, the related improvements, and then the leg of road, and away we go. I think, is that all I have, Abby? Okay. So if you could go, so maybe that's the best slide. I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Renee Kelly, are you anticipating them approving it?
Yes.
Is that why we're doing the 2 years?
Yes, we are. Yeah, because if there was no hope, we'd be, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Brian Harvey, for the record, just kind of layman terms, what's the holdup with? Like, you said both parties are in agreement holistically.
Well, you know about conceptually an agreement, right, versus signing the deal. Rob, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I wish I didn't have to, but we've been working on this agreement with the railroad for well over 3 years. Because initially there wasn't going to be that much, just a couple crossings, panels. Most of the work took place on Comstock. But the railroad at a certain point decided they wanted a brand new crossing. So that threw us into a whole nother loop. We have been in agreement with what they want all along. We have an agreement back and forth to do this, but what we're waiting for now is the railroad to actually get back to us with a contract. Because we can't do anything. The railroad does it all. All we can do is pay for it. City gets involved in it also, but we're just at their mercy. And I want to say we're close, but you know, horseshoes and hand grenades, right? I'm not there, and if it's created big complications. So we are processing the final map. It's sitting there basically waiting. It's not like we've just done nothing. This is ready to go pretty quickly after they get to the table with their work. But I wish I could tell you what I think it'll take. I have absolutely no idea. That it is unbelievable the power and the arrogance that they have. Railroad is not about the public at all. So we're working on it. Unfortunately, we're here. I mean, life's tough enough, but this is just, there's nothing we can do. And I can't go to the city. I can't beg. I can't, there's no check I can write. I just have to.
What it is, yeah.
John Briscoe, this is the first time you've asked for an extension?
Yes.
Is this the first?
Yeah, this is the first time, yes.
Yeah, we well expected to be underway by now.
Yeah. Right.
But it's gonna happen. I mean, we have finally gotten to the point where there is agreement, which means I'm agreed to do everything they want. And even though it's ridiculous, we shouldn't be having to do it, but we're versus fighting them another 5 years. We just acquiesced. But even having done that, you'd think they'd be eager to see a new crossing go in, but they're not. I mean, they're just taking their time and there's no timelines to force them. So, but we'll get there. It just could take, who knows, 6 months, a year? Anyway. Any questions beyond that, I'm happy to answer, but that's really the crux of it. Yes, if I can answer.
Yeah. So Chair South, for the record, again, phase one is already built. Is that correct in the concept?
No, it's the related issue with phase one.
But it's,
Yeah.
Thank you. I was trying to understand that.
Yeah,
it's the same access that's
Same access.
required. And phase one final map is sitting there. Phase two, the first phase of phase two is in the process. We're close to getting that, but what I can't do is the crossing, which is both phases are predicated on that. So we're, we'll look for alternate means of dealing with this, but right now we're just out of time.
Anything else?
Anybody have any questions?
Priscilla Nelson, I live on Socrates Drive. I've been walking that area for 28 years. And there's a lot of houses there now. So how far are you coming up there? Does this affect Socrates Drive at all?
Is not. No connection.
Yeah, we can't connect.
Yeah, we can't connect. There's no legal.
It looks like it should connect, but we can't.
So we don't want it to.
No, I know it's what I'm saying. It looks like it should happen, but it's not. No, that's been off the table for 20 years that I've been involved in this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
There's nothing there. It's all open space between us and your area. There'll be a park, there'll be trails
A park?
with no connection. Well, park, trails. People use them.
University Ridge. HOA has quite a history with parks, so. Doesn't help. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing nobody? Thank you, Mr. John. Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks for your time.
Oh, geez. Okay, what do you want? Oh, sorry. Yes, sir.
For the record, John, I'm just with you. Since we're working on phase one and phase two, we just learned that phase one is on hold until you get to crossing. I'm kind of wondering, will you have to resubmit the whole plan because of the 2-year timeline drag? There might be new conditions that might arise. So my question is, once we get the crossing considered, you're asking for a 2-year delay. Is that right? Chip?
That's correct.
You have to resubmit the whole plan including phase one.
No, because we went back and got planning commission. I mean, they're pretty gracious here. They realize that the home builder wants to get out there and produce homes, but can't do it. So we didn't have any new conditions. We don't expect any new conditions here. We've talked with staff about it. They're completely on board. And I think it's just going to be a matter of getting permission to go 2 more years. It'll all fall in place with his deal with the railroad, and then you'll just bust out phase one and phase two if there's a market.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're done.
Thank you all for your time.
Like I said,
Abby, thank you.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Okay, so we're at C, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anybody have any announcements that need to be brought forward? Geez, don't jump all at once. Yes, Jared.
Last week I had, this is, of course, my Jared Souther.
Thank you.
Last week I had the opportunity to attend the meeting that was held at O'Brien Middle School in regards to Washington County School District and their plans for the North Valleys. And I thought it would be good just to review that they are planning to build a new elementary school between Stead and Lemon Valley. I think it's Pony Express or something like that. But then what they would do is first take Lemon Valley Elementary, other students maybe attend school to the new school, rebuild Lemon Valley, and then they would bring Stead Elementary into the new school and close Stead Elementary and repurpose it for other ideas.
Okay. Yeah, that's what Corey Bond, that's what I heard as well. Okay,
So, and then Cold Springs High School is being delayed.
right.
That being said, it's a great opportunity. In October, they're planning to have another public meeting. And I want to spread that word so people know that they can learn and share their opinions about how the school district grows.
Okay.
In the North Valleys.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Then, any future agenda items that anybody wants to ask for? No.
I have a question.
Okay,
And people that are here,
and you're who?
oh, Councilmember Ebert for the
Thank you.
record,
Thank you.
and people that are here request anything for the upcoming meeting or,
No,
Okay.
it's for us.
okay,
It's for the dais.
Okay.
So, okay, my last item, Ms. Abigail, if I'm right, is public comment.
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
If anyone would like to give public comment, now is the time. I haven't received any forms.
I would like to. I will fill out a form where.
Thank you.
okay,
My name is Joseph Riley. I just want to talk about some of the developments going on in Lemon Valley and the accountability of the construction companies that are completing the development. So I'm almost a neighbor to Megan. We travel the same commute pretty much daily. Military Road to Kelly Lane right now is currently rather ripped up, I could say. But what I'm having a hard time with is I watched a person die on that road and get hit in the bike lane just a handful of months ago. As a matter of fact, it's on my dash cam. So it's something I don't want to remember, but I went out there today before I even came to this meeting and I watched because the road is so rough. 90% of the traffic that I recorded with my phone drives through the bike lane because they didn't want to drive on the rough road. Campbell's refusing. I've submitted Reno direct requests. I haven't talked directly to Campbell Construction. I don't have any reason to. I don't have any business with them. But the road needs to be repaired to make it safe for pedestrians. The second fact is anybody that lives on Corso Street gets awoken in the middle of the night. The road is so rough that when semi-trailers hit it, it sounds like thunder in our backyards. It wakes my child up. My neighbors are sleeping in their living rooms to avoid sleeping in their bedrooms that face the road. It's that loud. When they place the steel plates on the road, they put the warning sign for the steel plate at the steel plate. When they place the lane diverters in the road, they don't give you any warning ahead of time. When they've placed traffic controls in place, if I'm getting close to my 2 minutes, let me know. Megan and I can't see to make a left-hand turn out of our neighborhood safely. They actually block our visibility to oncoming traffic. I did speak with Angela Fuss today and requested the code enforcement come out and look into this issue. It's been a fight with this project since April of 2022. Megan was part of that with me as well, where the developer raised the land about 50 inches higher than they were supposed to. So in my backyard, I had foundation finished grade visible over the top of my fence. The development was originally denied. It's since been approved last year, but I'd just like to see if we're gonna approve developments, holding the construction company accountable to what the residents that have lived in for years have to put up with while they do it. So that's where I stand on the issue.
all right. Jared,
Jared South for the record. To add to that, I'm amazed that, in the next few years, RTC has a plan to widen military, at least from Lemon to Lear. But I don't see where they have that bandwidth to do it because there's not much right of way to take. And now that they've allowed this developer to build houses on the left and the right side of that road, it doesn't make sense. And then so I travel that route often because of family. And so I go myself, I have great empathy for that. Outside of that, I also want to bring up the fact that this week they were breaking ground, I believe, on the new FC Reno soccer stadium at Park Boulevard. And now they're saying they're building 1,000 parking spots. I don't understand that. Like, how do they fit 1,000 parking spots on that little tiny stamp of land? They're trying to build this gigantic stadium. And now they're saying they're going to be able to have 1,000 parking spots on this hillside. It just boggles my mind. So.
okay. If I don't see anything else, which I don't,
No,
I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
And you would be,
John Briscoe.
thank you.
John White second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are done. Thank you, everybody.